Hey, what's up? This is Mac. I'm gonna do the September Q&A stream, or not stream. It's a video. This isn't live. Just gonna answer a few questions that people wrote, and you can look at this beautiful video that I've constructed. It's sped up 16 times. I don't have the video of me drawing and doing the flat color stuff for these guys. I thought I did, and I completely forgot that I don't have the recording of that one, of the first part, but hopefully you can get something out of this. And you can look at the wolf video I posted or a few of the other posts. Kind of shows you how I do things. So yeah, let's get on with the questions. How do I imagine some of the characters sound? It's a good question. I have voices in my head. Their voices are in my head when I draw them, but I don't know if I could explain them. I don't really think of like celebrity voices or anything like that usually. Like on a few occasions, like one of the characters, like Resher, I think of him as sort of I think his name's Al Swearingen. He's a character on Deadwood, this western that was on HBO a few years ago. It's really good, but he's kind of this gangster basically, kind of a wannabe aristocratic type, but he's too rough edged for that, you know. The other characters, I would say they have kind of stock archetype voices, you know, depending on what their character is. It kind of annoys me in a lot of movies when they have like very obvious voice, like celebrity voice acting, because I can only picture that celebrity in my head, and it kind of breaks the immersion. So I kind of prefer unknown voice actors. Usually when they bring a celebrity voice in, it's too distracting to me. I can only picture that actor in my head. It's not a big deal. I get used to it, but it's kind of annoying. But yeah, most of the characters have pretty normal voices. What inspired me to make Scurry? A few different things. One was I was sick of my job. I was working on a project I didn't care about, and I wanted to work on my own things. Another thing was I had this other idea in my head. It's this kind of grand time travel sci-fi fantasy story. Is ridiculous. It's way too complicated, and I didn't really know what I was doing. So I decided I would do this thing first. I had this other idea, of course, of this mouse in the woods. So I was like, okay, well, that sounds simple. I can do that one first, and kind of learn how to write while I was working on it. So I just started working on this guy, and it became so complicated over the years. Like it took me years to make and turned into this grand, epic fantasy thing. It didn't end up being easier, but as far as like what kind of artwork inspired me is early 80s movies, a lot of fantasy movies, a lot of animated movies, of course, Secret of NIMH. I kind of had this dim memory of these movies, like I hadn't rewatched them in decades really, so I didn't really remember them, but I had a sense of them. You know, something about that kind of creepy dark tone of a lot of these movies stuck with me, and I wanted to capture that feeling, even though it's not, you know, it's kind of set in the future, post-apocalyptic story, which I'm a big fan of all things post-apocalyptic or dystopian, you know, from Mad Max to Blade Runner to The Road. Like I love all that stuff, and you kind of combine that with the kind of dark fantasy of stuff like Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, Secret of NIMH, like those Bakshi movies, like the Lord of the Rings movie. Even like Disney was getting in on the act. The Black Cauldron is kind of it's pretty dark for a Disney animated movie. Just a lot of that stuff, kind of old, like heavy metal is another thing. There's tons of stuff that inspired it. But what is Scurry about? What are we supposed to learn from this, or is it just for the thrills? It's not a message story really, but some themes kind of emerged while I was writing it. Kind of a general anti-authoritarian tendency that I have sometimes. You know, like all the factions are kind of corrupt and bureaucratic and dysfunctional, whether it's the Beavers or the Ravens or the colony, you know, council guys. They don't really know what they're doing. So I guess that's kind of the closest thing to some sort of coherent message, I guess. What do you do to stay motivated? That is a tough question. I'm not even sure I'm the right guy to ask, because there's a lot of times that I'm not motivated at all. One big thing is I don't really have a choice. This is kind of my job, and I don't really have a plan B. I'm not good at anything else, so I kind of have to do this. But working on my own project is a big motivation, obviously. It's much easier to work on your own thing than it is to work for clients and studios and things like that. The last 100 pages, I pretty much just had to kind of brute force it. I just wanted to see, my only real motivation was just wanting to see the whole thing finished and complete. So that was my biggest motivation. What kind of processes, tools, or resources do you use to keep on task and on schedule? I don't really use anything now. There's a few scheduling apps and things on my phone and on the Chrome browser that I was using early on that kind of kept me organized a little. But after a few pages of work, I just kind of do it in my head now. I'm pretty disorganized in general, and I'm not the guy to ask. As far as like the Kickstarter stuff, like all the shipping and printing and keeping all that stuff on schedule, I use Basecamp to talk to my printer guys, and I had to learn how to do spreadsheets and all that. Yeah, I have tons of spreadsheets for all of that stuff. I need to do like a crowdfunding tutorial or walkthrough or post-mortem. That would probably be the best way to do it. I don't know if people would be interested, but how do I handle an off day? Not well. I mostly just kind of sleep it off and hope the next day is better. Doesn't always work out, but I kind of just deal with it. Eventually, it'll come back around where I'm productive again. I go through, days or weeks where I'm unmotivated and can't get anything done. I'm kind of a manic person when it comes to artwork. I work really hard and then I kind of sit in a pit of despair and for a while, and then eventually it comes back around to the working part. So I just kind of deal with it. What contemporary current artists do you look to for inspiration, or just like for that matter? Well, I've been looking at Don Bluth a lot of animation stuff, just all kinds of animation, from anime to Disney to whatever. That's what I've been looking at a lot lately. I like Dave Raposa is pretty good as far as like digital people. Been watching some like Fingzu stuff lately. Kind of go all over the place, to be honest. I'm terrible with names. I never remember anybody's names, but I just know their artwork. I'm not sure my actual art reflects the artist I like at all. I like Mike Mignola is one of my favorite artists ever, and I draw nothing like him. Joe Madureira is another guy. I worked at a studio that he ran, or he was the creative director there or whatever. I tried to kind of copy his style. I worked on Darksiders too, and some other stuff there. And I can never really get it. It's insane the way he does things. And same with Mike Mignola. I've tried to copy him, and I have no idea how to do it. There's just a lot. It's probably the usual suspects that you see everywhere. We all kind of have the same artists that we like. What is my artistic educational background? I am pretty much self-taught. I've just gone to a lot of what do you call them, conferences or whatever, those art meetup things. I've done a couple of those, and just looked around the internet and the usual stuff. Conceptart.org is where I started out, but it's mostly just drawing it myself and figuring it out myself. I think art school is just insanely overpriced, and unless you're rich, there's no reason to go. I mean, there's no reason to go into debt for an art degree. It's useless. I've worked as a concept artist for like 8 or 9 years, and nobody's ever asked for a degree or anything, so it doesn't matter. I've been listening to the Sean Murphy Batman Animated Series podcast. One of the best parts is hearing these amazing professional artists talking about what they hate to draw. Is there anything you don't like drawing? There's a lot of things I get frustrated drawing or kind of dread drawing. It's mostly just like there's a lot of interior, like architecture stuff is a pain to draw. Vehicles, when I have to draw that, it's kind of, I'm not very good at that stuff. Anything that requires a lot of design knowledge. I don't hate drawing them, though. It's kind of fun once I get into it. After a few years of working in concept art, where I kind of had to learn to do all that stuff, once I learned how to do it, it wasn't nearly as unpleasant to draw. I don't get too pissed off about having to draw anything anymore. It's kind of all shapes to me at this point. Is there a part of the artistic process that you feel doesn't get talked about enough? One thing, I've had kind of this theory about style lately. The common refrain you'll hear online is that you shouldn't worry about style, that it'll just come to you as you work, on the fundamentals. But that didn't really work for me because I just ended up as kind of this generic realist artist, who was pretty good at fundamentals, but I had no style whatsoever, and I'm still kind of working on that. It wasn't until I started really focusing on my influences, on what artists influenced me, why they influenced me, what I liked about their art, what worked. You take that from a few different artists and you combine it in original ways. Because there's no every artist out there has influences, right? There's nobody out there that I can think of that just has this totally original style. So I don't really agree with that idea that style just comes over time. Maybe for some people, but it really didn't for me. So there you go. Are some or all characters inspired by characters from stories? If so, who is inspired by whom and why? Yeah, I mean, they're all kind of inspired by the stuff of growing up watching and reading and all that stuff, but for the most part, there's no specific ones. I mean, obviously, like one of the cats, Orc, is obvious, like, homage to Dragon from Secret of Nim. He was only supposed to be in the story for like 2 pages originally, but I ended up liking him so much I kept him in. And now everybody sees him and they immediately think of Dragon from Secret of Nim. As far as other, like I said, Resher was sort of like a Elsewhere engine type from Deadwood. But all the characters probably have some sort of connection to some character I've seen or read before. But at this point, they're so internalized that I don't really even remember what they came from, On your most recent post showing the different processes you've been experimenting with, what's the difference in the amount of time you spend on the flat color cartoon and the fully rendered version? Well, the fully rendered version usually includes the flat color cartoon sort of process that I use. It's just kind of on top of that, and it usually takes about twice as long, or at least anywhere from the same amount of time to twice as long, or sometimes 3 times as long. But it's kind of like mindless work for me at this point. Like I can render without thinking. I can kind of listen to some audiobook or podcast or something while I'm working. But the first part where I'm drawing and doing the flat colors and the lighting and stuff like that requires a little more brain power, so I have to kind of concentrate. So yeah, it basically takes twice the amount of time. Yeah, that's all the questions we had this month. So yeah, if you have any other questions, I'm gonna do another Q&A this month and try to get to it. Sorry it took so long for me to upload this one, and my voice has been scratchy. I've barely been able to talk the last few days. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully I answered all your questions. See you next month.